think I had to turn myself on. That's me. Good morning. Ooh, that's the first time you guys have actually I'm done. You guys are here. It's great. All right. Well, that means that I've got to actually keep up with you now. So, you're in the Summer at the Movies series, right? This is one of the series that I think for most of us, if you've been coming to Epic for a while, you look forward to it every year because it's kind of an excuse to just sit here and watch clips of movies. But we also talk about God in the middle of it, which is good, right? This is a good thing to do on a Sunday. Today, we're going to be talking about, we're going to be kind of dipping into and out of, because we have a tub, a movie called The Finest Hours, because we're on a Disney kick. And so, we're just doing Disney movies over and over again. That's not really the reason. But The Finest Hours is, just real quick, is just a movie about a Coast Guard rescue. Takes place in the past. Gain down, Vinay. And so what it's going to do, though, for us is going to kind of be able to be compared to some actual stories in Scripture. And so we're going to read the Bible, which I was shocked about. Mike was like, hey, can you talk about the Bible this week? I was like, oh, yeah, I guess I could do that, right? So this is falling flat on everybody. That's fine. I'll move on. It's okay. It's okay. You don't have to be here with me. It's cool. I'm up here by myself. I'll be in the tub. We're going to do something a little bit different, though, because this is something that maybe you don't often get to experience in church on a Sunday morning. I'm going to have everybody bow your heads. That's not the part you don't experience. Go ahead and bow your heads, right? Just kind of close your eyes and picture your week, the week you just got done surviving, the week you just got through. Picture maybe some of the negative things that came up this week. Maybe somebody cut you off 3 times because they kept passing you and then cutting you off again. Maybe somebody said something mean to you. Maybe you were mean to somebody else. If you could see my hand, it'd be raised in the air for that. Just picture all those negative things. And then go ahead and raise your heads and open your eyes. We're going to hold on to those things. We're not going to do anything with them right now. So hold on to those in your head, right? Because we want to be down in the dumps for the whole day. It's going to be great. We're moving from football last week to sailing, because that's a logical transition for all of us, right? I think most of us maybe didn't necessarily play sports, or at least sports that you would consider to be oh yeah, football is the sport in high school or whatever. But I think all of us have experienced storms in life, right? Show of hands, anybody experience a storm in life? Anybody going through a storm in life? You can have both hands up if you want. You can lay down on the ground and curl up in a fetal position. That's fine. Any of those are responses to storms in life, right? Because they're real things. Storms are real things. In fact, on your notes, real quick into there, we're going to do that first blank, right? It says storms impact, and the reality is, as you saw with everybody's hands went up, is that storms impact everyone. They impact everyone. Nobody is off the table when it comes to the storms of life. For my family, we've been dealing with the Intel layoffs from last year in July. My wife, 19 years at Intel, literally done on just about every job you can think of there, laid off after 19 years and a month last July. We're in a storm, right? That's an adjustment for us. It's been a season of feeling the world is just capricious, it's just mean to us for no reason. There's been a huge amount of stress, especially for my wife, who feels like she's not able to participate the way that she was before. It's uncertainty, right? What's coming next for us? Because before we had this, admittedly nice income coming from Intel, but now it's what do we do? What do we do? And so often it feels like the storms of life just kind of come from nowhere. Right? And some of those things that we just pictured just a minute ago that hopefully you're still holding on to, because I want you to feel bad all day, is this came out of nowhere, right? What did you do to deserve that? Why, right? We can't even. That's how it feels, right? Every single piece of ours, and it's just all abbreviated speech, a lot of curse words. So it's we get in that space where we're this came from nowhere. And not all storms necessarily are physical. Many of them are emotional. All of them are spiritual in nature. And in fact, most of our storms don't even impact just us, right? We're not the first person to have these things happen. We have family, right? We have communities. We even have nations that experience storms all at the same time. And those storms look like loss of loved ones or relationships. They look like terrible diagnoses or even betrayals of long-holding relationships. And those are the outside storms. What about the inside ones? What about the ones that if somebody were to ask us, do you think you could have avoided that? And we look back and say, hey, I'm in a storm. Don't talk to me about specifics. Because some of our storms are our fault. right? We walk into a space and we've done something, we've made a choice, we got addicted to something, we created our storm. And the refrain amongst whether you caused it or not is the same for everyone. Help! That's the refrain for a storm. That's the call. Bless you. Sorry, I have a mic on. The thing about storms is that they're bigger than us, they're stronger than us, and they don't seem to care about us, right? No matter how many times I've talked to a storm, it's never really listened to me. Praying to the storm has not really done much good in life at all. Just secret, don't pray to the storm. It doesn't care about you, right? I want to illustrate this today. We're going to jump into the movie. And I want to illustrate this. We're going to see a clip in just a second about a tanker. Now, this tanker is unique, and we're going to go into that afterwards. But just be ready, because this movie is kind of intense. I fully anticipate you guys watching this when you go home. It's on Disney+. It's great. It's 1952. It's February. Not a freak blizzard, a blizzard they knew was coming, but a blizzard that was decadal in its size, right? Started taking out power all along the coastline. This is right off of Cape Cod in Massachusetts, and the Coast Guard stations, which are actually sprinkled pretty liberally in that area, they lose power too. This is at a time where we kind of treated the Coast Guard as not really that important, I guess. So they didn't have a lot of backups, they had terrible radar, etc. And so that boat, as you can see, is kind of in dire straits, right? It's the SS Pendleton. It breaks in half. The T2 tankers were actually notorious for that. In the same storm, 5 hours earlier, the SS Fort Mercer did the exact same thing in the same storm. The difference, though, is that the Fort Mercer had its radio, was able to call for SOS, and when the ship broke in half, 5 souls lost their lives in that moment, but nobody else perished. And the Coast Guard was able to effect a rescue for the Fort Mercer. Okay? But 5 hours earlier from that, the Pendleton had broken apart, and nobody knew that. Nobody on land knew that the Pendleton was in that dire strait. Their radio went with the bow. Their helm, the ability to control the rudder on the ship, to steer it, went with the bow. And when that broke in half, the rear, which appears to be floating okay for now is out of control and can't radio for help. They're in dire straits. They're isolated. There's definitely palpable terror for that crew. They're in 60-foot seas. These are waves of 60 feet tall from trough to crest. It's a palpable fear, a palpable, like something that you can actually feel, whether you're a sailor or not. You can kind of get the sense it's like, oh, that's not good. That's a tough Tuesday, right? Like Wednesday, we're used to that. Come on. But Tuesday, I don't know if I could hold that. Right? These people can't see the shore. They're only 10 miles offshore, but they can't see it because of the storm. They can't use the lifeboat in that movie, and I won't give away too much of the movie, but in that movie, they actually kind of panic, and they start to divide. They're like, who's in charge? Well, I'm in charge, and I think we should get off the boat now, and we should get the lifeboats. And so they're getting ready to push the lifeboat down, and the engineer comes out because he's like, do not take the lifeboat. You will die. And while they're all arguing about who should get in the lifeboat first, he comes out with an axe and cuts the lifeboat free, lets it fall to the water, and then they all witness it crash and break apart against the hull of the ship. Anyone who would have been in that boat would have died instantly. So they can't take the lifeboats. The seas are too rough. There's literally nothing for them to do. So they scramble, they scrape, right? They're in a panic state, right? So it's literally just something, anything. That's some of the things that I hope that you're still picturing, right? Because I promise you, I want you to feel bad all day. You're picturing, like, I've tried a whole bunch of stuff to get out of this storm. Somebody, anybody, something, anything, help me. And you might be thinking, Disney, right? Like, they're the people who told us that lemmings run off of cliffs, and that's not true, right? So maybe it's an exaggeration. I will tell you, in the clip that I picked, the only exaggerating thing about that scene is how quickly the bow sank. It actually took 7 days, and that they still had lights on, because the lights were with the engine, not the bow. Those are the only two exaggerated parts of that scene. The boat did break in half in 60-foot swells, and all 8 men on the front of that boat died. They were swept off. When they found the boat 7 days later, there was one frozen body on it. The rest had disappeared, never found. It's a tragedy, right? But it's tempting for us when we look and hear about other people's storms, a lot like how we may have interpreted that one, that maybe there's some hyperbole, some exaggeration, some imagination and just how bad the storm can be, right? Like you might have told somebody, like, I'm having a really tough time at my job. My kids are just doing, like, I'm in this storm. And they've been like, I've been there before. Isn't that helpful when somebody says that to you? Oh, yeah, that can't be that bad. I read on my Instagram post that they were, right? Social media doctor told me. But when it's our storm, all hands on deck. Muster your pillows and blankets. Start stemming this crack in the hull. We got to stay afloat as long as possible. Everyone, someone, anyone, help me. Our storms are real. Whether or not you think somebody else's storm is at the level of your own is irrelevant. Our storms are real to us. And everyone in here has felt that. And so today we're going to continue our ship theme, because we're not going back to football. We're done with that. We're going to stay on ships. And instead of talking about an event that was 70 years ago, right, 1952 in February, we're going to talk about an event that was 2,000 years ago. So if you have your Bibles, go ahead and open them up. We're going to spend most of the day in Luke 8, if you're curious. But I want to tell you a little bit about Luke before we get there, because Luke is a fascinating author to me. He is one of my favorite New Testament authors. Paul's pretty high up there. I mean, he's kind of important. But, Luke is interesting because Luke is the only Gentile author in the New Testament. He's the only non-Jew author in the New Testament. And he has 2 books, basically Luke and Luke 2. We call it Acts, right? And they cover an amazing narrative history of Jesus' ministry on earth and the early church. And so the gospel, according to Luke, is basically Luke said, I'm going to ask Mark and I'm going to ask Peter about what happened because they were with Jesus. Luke wasn't with Jesus. And then Luke took that and he said, okay, now I'm going to talk to all the witnesses that are still alive while I'm writing this account, and I'm going to cross-examine like an investigative reporter, and anything that it actually lines up, I'm going to keep. And anything that doesn't, I'm not saying it didn't happen, but I can't corroborate it. Right? And so in this scenario, we get this amazing orally passed to Luke, but then written down, precise historical accounting of the life of Jesus during his ministry. Luke is a book that you can actually go and find the things he mentions in the real world now. I like to summarize them this way. If Luke wrote it, you could see it. Right? So he's not prone to exaggerating language. He's not prone to giving the emotions of things unless you could see the emotion on someone, right? Unless other people could be like, oh yeah, no, he was heartbroken. You could see it. Then Luke will write about it. He's not prone to exaggeration, which is wonderful when we have to talk about things that are hard, like storms. We don't necessarily want exaggerated detail about our storms. We want somebody to help us. I don't need them to be right alongside me making the storm worse. Like, oh, yeah, that's terrible, and my kids are bad, too, and they know each other. Oh, we're all bad. I need help, not more, right? And so we're going to turn to Luke chapter 8, verse 22, and we're going to read it from on the screen. It's on the Sky Bible for me. You guys have it in your books. It's also in your notes. And so keep that in mind with Luke. One day he got into a boat, he being Jesus, with his disciples, and he said to them, hey, let's go to the other side of the lake. Now, this lake is called the Sea of Galilee, and they set out. And as they sailed, he, Jesus, fell asleep. Okay? I want to give some ideas about where we are. So the Sea of Galilee is the lowest freshwater lake in the world. It's negative 680 feet below sea level. On the north side of this lake, there are the Golan Heights, which rise from the Sea of Galilee up 2,000 feet, nearly sheer. They're cliffs, basically. And they go up to the Golan Heights, and then they kind of taper off to the desert beyond, or the plains beyond, right? And on the other side are a bunch of canyons that funnel winds up into the lake. So you have this sheer cliff on one side, you have these canyons on the other side, and so all year you have the ability to have weather on the lake, all year. Now the boat they're on is interesting. So this stage is perfect, thanks Mike. This is 24 feet long. So the boat they're on would have been about from here, sorry James, to here. I promise we'll get to the water right on you. I got it. Now, this boat also would have been about 7.5 feet wide. So 2 of these tiles, if you can see them later. And it would have been able to hold about 1,000 pounds of fish or cargo, or 12 passengers, including the crew. And it'd be crewed by about 4 or 5 people, rowers mostly, but a captain or a skipper of the boat. And so they all pile in. And the boat's full of people. And so when it's full of people, it has a 2-foot draft, which means about 2 feet of the hull, which is a little bit taller than the stage, would be exposed above the waterline. That's not a lot of room between you and the water coming in. But I don't want to give away the game. And the sea is 8 miles across, right? So it's an 8-mile across thing. And so the stage is set, right? We already had the hint of what's about to happen, right? Then Luke continues in your notes. He says, and a windstorm came down, it sounds right, from the Golan Heights. Remember, Luke writes about things you can see. It came down onto the lake, and they were filling with water, 2-foot draft, and they were in danger. Now, to give you a sense of what's going on in the minds of the crew here, these are lifelong commercial fishermen. That's four or five of his disciples that are in the boat with him, along with the crew of the boat. It's not Jesus' boat. He didn't walk around with a boat in his back pocket. He got a boat, right? So these people are familiar with the Sea of Galilee. They're familiar with what happens. And here's the thing about that 2-foot bow is that it takes less than 10 minutes for a storm to come up on the Sea of Galilee today. This still happens today. We've actually found a boat just like, we'll call it the SS Panic, just like the SS Panic in the mud, preserved in the mud. So we know exactly what boats of this nature looked like 2,000 years ago, like with excruciating detail. They had a center mast. They had a keel board, but no keel. They weren't deep. They were more like barges, right? So they can't handle wayward winds, right? And so it takes less than 10 minutes for a storm to come up on the Sea of Galilee that has hurricane-force winds, 30 to 60-mile-an-hour winds coming off the Golan Heights, slams into the warm, tepid air, huge mixing of atmosphere. You guys are getting a science lesson today. And then it's wind-driven waves coming in at the boat. They're not like ocean swells, what we saw, where you saw the boat going up and down, still can't keep up with the waves, so it comes crashing over. These are wind-driven waves, where the water does not move. The wind pushes the top of the water. The rest of it's not moving, so it's just coming over the top, which means the boat doesn't rise with the wave. It gets hit by the wave. And if you get hit by 3 6-foot waves in one of these boats, you sink in less than a minute. So the sense of panic is palpable. And admittedly, this is where I feel like Luke lets me down when I need to teach this, right? Because Luke doesn't do exaggeration. He's like, yeah, they were in danger. Okay, Luke, I'm going to need a little bit more because they all look tired. So I'm going to talk out of Mark for this next piece. It's not in your notes. We're going to have it on the screen, though. And here's what the author of Mark does, because it's interesting, right? Mark gives us the emotion of it. Mark was there, right? He has the sense of what was going on. And so what happens is we get a description of kind of the people piece outside of just the facts piece, which I think for us is pretty interesting. And so he says this. He says, Jesus, that's the he in the previous one, was sleeping at the back of the boat. We'll say this is the back, again, because I really want to do this to somebody. And he had his head on a pillow, a cushion, sleeping like a baby. Everybody else run around, oh my gosh, throw things off, throw them off, right? Get the boat higher. We gotta survive. What are we doing? This is us, right? Like in our heads right now, our storms, right? Like, oh my gosh, what do I do? I'm just gonna throw the drums off. Like, oh my, why do we have drums on a boat? Anyway, so we have all this stuff, and Jesus is, you can just picture it, right? Like Mark, Peter, all them, they're over here like, I don't know what to do. Let's cast lots. We'll throw somebody off, right? Like they just do that. And they look over like, there's Jesus. This is a fourth wall break moment for the disciples. You can just picture it, right? They all turn their heads, and they look and like, are you kidding me? You can picture that, right? Like, that's not what Mark says. Admittedly, I'm adding some things in here, right? But maybe they just kind of strolled over, sarcastically. A little bit of snide. I'm not saying they kicked him, but when they kicked him, they shout at him awake. The disciples wake him up shouting, Teacher, don't you care that we're going to drown? Don't you care? How many of us, in the midst of our storms, have looked to heaven and said, don't you care? And sometimes we kind of feel like maybe he's just sleeping. Maybe Jesus just sleeping, not even aware that there's a storm. It certainly feels like that. And that's a posture, a position that you can be in and still be faithful. I think some of us in here sometimes feel like, oh, if I have that type of feeling, then my faith must be broken. No, you're alive. Lament is part of worship, not just joy. It's the exact reason I wanted you to hold on to some of those negative feelings in your head, is because you're allowed to lament in the midst of worship. In the midst of rejoicing what God has done, who he is, his character, his love for you, the care that he has put into everything around you. In the midst of that, we still suffer. Jesus literally promised us that we would suffer. There would be something that happens, probably many things, probably on the same day and really badly timed. He promised that that would happen. And yet, despite that, he said, I care for you more than the birds in the air, the flowers in the field, the fish in the sea. You are the most important thing to me. I made you to love you. And you will have suffering. You will have difficulty. You will have pain. You will experience heartache. You will experience despair. And you will, of your own power and your own strength, try in desperation, and you will still have no success. Bad to worse. So they lost control of the tiller when the bow broke off. So the Seabird, that's the guy who was doing a lot of the talking, Engineer Seabird is one of the reasons that they're even alive still, right? He prevented them from getting in that boat, the lifeboat, etc. He cleverly rigged up a manual tiller to steer this craft. I mean, this is tons and tons and tons of steel floating through the water, and they're going to try and steer it with a little rod. So they have pulleys, block and tackle. They got ropes. If you're familiar with any of those sailing like that, what he was trying to do was incredibly difficult. And he was being successfully able to steer that ship to a shoal, a shallow outcropping of rock that's generally near a coast. Because they know they're near the coast, they just can't get to shore, right? And so he's trying to ground the boat. And they got to do it hard because 60-foot swells are going to knock them off those rocks, right? So they got to ground that boat hard, and they're right on target for it. They got people up on the deck who are doing kind of a ladder line, all right, 3 degrees north, 3 degrees north, 3 degrees. They're doing that whole thing like you might find in Robin Hood Men in Tights. And so it's there. Yeah, I have weird references in my head. And so they're trying desperately, right? All of their desperation, all of their efforts, everything that they can possibly do, and just one wave, that bigger, more powerful storm that doesn't care about how much effort they put into saving themselves. It doesn't care that they were already wet and now they're wet again. It doesn't care about any of that stuff. And that storm suddenly throws them another wave, sideways, which is not where they were facing. And it breaks free the tiller, punches a new hole in the boat. That's helpful. Breaks a whole bunch of stuff and starts filling the boat with water even faster. And if the water reaches the air intakes of the engines are kaput. You can't do anything with it after that. And they keep losing electrical power because the pumps can't keep up. It's dire straits. And what they need is true for everyone in a storm, including us, is they need rescue. Right? What they need is rescue. And the thing about rescue, and as you saw, they're trying everything they can do, and it's not working. Everything that we try to do doesn't seem to be able to get me out of the storms of life. Over and over again, I feel like, okay, I finally got my head above, or I'm finally on dry ground. Maybe I feel like I've overcome the storm and it's behind me, and all that happens is next week I just get knocked right back down in the water. And the waves start crashing over, and I've got wind, and I can't see, it's mostly the hair, and there's all this stuff going on, and what am I supposed to do? I've tried everything. And we all need rescue. And the thing about rescue is, it always comes from the outside. That's the rescue. This is where we diverge from the movie in real life. So, that's a 36-foot boat, slightly larger than my stage. It can hold 12 passengers plus its 4-man crew. There are 33 people currently on the SS Pendleton. Right after that, they lose their compass. They don't have radio contact with the shore. They lose their compass. They don't know where the Pendleton is. And the only reason they even braved the bar, which is a suicidal move in a blizzard, because that's ocean waves coming and crashing onto shore, basically shoreline shallowness. And so you get this big mixing of sort of this outbound from the Cape, outbound water that's hitting the ocean that wants to come in, and it creates this huge, turbulent, terrible water system. We have a bar. It's one of the world's most famous bars on the planet here in Oregon. It's called the Columbia River Bar. The Coast Guard sends all of their skippers and rescue boat crews to Oregon, no matter where they're stationed, to train on bar crossings, because Oregon is the standard. During this storm, that was making Oregon look a little bit tame. They're hitting 30-foot swells in front of them because they've lost a little bit of energy. 30 feet is taller than this building. Earlier in the film, Bernie Weber, that's the skip, he says a line, I'm going to butcher it, but he basically says, we have to go out, but we don't have to come back. Brave. If you know a Coast Guardsman, please buy them a drink of water, obviously. No, these are real lives on the line, though, right? I mean, these guys, they don't have to go. They could literally they could just puddle around inside of Cape Cod. Nobody can see them. The storm is so bad, it's whiteout conditions. Nobody can see them from the Coast Guard station. They could puddle around and just be like, no, we tried to get over the bar, we failed, we had to come back in. And I don't think anybody at the station would have actually judged them negatively for doing that. It would have made perfect sense for them to turn back because they knew the danger when they sent them out in the first place. Lieutenant Clough, who's the one who sends them out, says, I need to send a boat. Who volunteers? And half the station's like, are you crazy? You're sending them to their deaths. He's like, the job is clear. That's what we signed up to do. It is to sacrifice ourselves to go forward and try and rescue somebody. Someone willing to go out for us, right? Despite the risks to effect a rescue. Because what do we need in a storm? Say it with me. We need rescue. We need help, right? So the movie differs, though, from Jesus. Jesus didn't have a life jacket on. He was asleep on a cushion, right? We met him sleeping through a storm. We met him feeling like he's not being very attentive. We met him shouting at him, saying, don't you care? And we can insert anything we want after that. For the disciples, that we're going to drown. As Luke says, that we're going to perish, right? It's totally worth watching that movie later, just as an aside. I've seen it about 3 times this week because I needed to. Bless you. But I don't want to reveal any more of the movie because it is literally quite the story. Very harrowing. But let's see what Jesus does when he's called to rescue, right? So in your notes, it says, and he awoke after being shouted at, and he rebuked the wind and the raging waves. What does it mean to rebuke? Right? It means to critique, to say, like, you're doing the wrong thing. Knock it off. Right? Like, you rebuke your children when they basically stole 3 cookies, but you caught them on the last 2. Like, okay, knock that off. Like, we're done. Like, you acting the fool, let's knock this off. Like, we're not doing this anymore, right? Like, so he rebukes the wind because it's acting up. It's not doing what it's supposed to do. It's misbehaving. And the raging waves. And so what happens? They ceased. Some translations say it became like glass. And there was a calm that happened. You see, Jesus is there, and when he shows up in his power, he has the power to stop the thing, to stop the storm for us. He has that ability. We think he's asleep all the time, but clearly he has that ability. And unlike the Pendleton, who didn't know, couldn't be aware that there was even going to be a Coast Guard boat coming to rescue them, that was even going to try and make an attempt because they have no radio. They can't see anything. It turns into night very soon after that, right? Because this is a long day. Tuesdays, right? I mean, it's tough. I just don't get the hang of it. But Jesus is aware and present of our storms at all times. He knows exactly where we are at all times. And the thing about him sleeping in the boat is not inattentiveness. It's example. It's example. He's showing us an example because he too went through the storms. He too lived a life here on this planet as a human being. He too did all of the things that we experience, that we've gone through, so that we could have an example in the midst of our storms. Now, does that mean that you're going to be able to sleep, in the midst of your storm? Not necessarily. But there's a reason that he was able to rest even though the storm is happening. In fact, in your notes for your memory verse today, the psalmist says this in Psalm 34:4. It says, I sought the Lord, and he answered me. And he delivered me from all of my fears. It doesn't say he delivered me from my circumstances. It doesn't say that he delivered me from getting fired or whatever hardship or whatever suffering thing or whatever thing that we've got in our heads right now that we've been holding on to, that now I want you to be able to start releasing to God now. You've been holding on to it. You're now allowed to say, God, in worship, I give this to you. Because he doesn't deliver us from the circumstances. He delivers us from the fear of the circumstance. Because something so much better, so much greater is actually assured on the other side of the storm. We have to go through the storm. It's just part of life. But we're not alone in that storm. We're not by ourselves. We're not left and abandoned. The fear of failure, the fear of pain, the fear of fear. I have the fear of fear. I don't like being afraid of things. I'm afraid of it. Nothing is too big for Jesus. The 6-foot waves smacking into the side of the SS Panic, sorry if you read your Bible that way now, did not deter God's understanding, Jesus' understanding, that he was being delivered from the fear of that circumstance. What happens, happens. It is bigger than us. It is not bigger than God. And he is sovereign and in control. It is one of the hardest things as a believer to come to an understanding and to come to a peace. But through Jesus and the inhabiting of the Holy Spirit, and we symbolize that by getting in this, you can have a peace that surpasses all understanding. Which means I can't really explain it to you. I just have to keep hitting you in the head with it. Because I don't get it either. But I know it exists. I've experienced it. I've experienced loss of loved ones that just seem like that's not fair, often comes into my mind. And yet, hands raised in praise and worship as I lament the loss. And so I want to finish out this Luke passage. And I'll admit, this is one of the most misunderstood statements by Jesus. So we're going to pay a little bit of careful attention here. He said to them, "Where is your faith?" And they were afraid. And they marveled, saying to one another, like, he can command the winds and the waves. I mean, who is this person, right? Like, they wanted to wake him up so he could panic with them. Because oftentimes, we just want God to participate in our panic. Like, God, could you just show up so that I at least feel like I'm doing the right thing right now? Right? Like, I was trying to throw Vince off the boat with his drums because we were sinking. Right? And so, God, can you just tell me that that's the right thing to do? Can you panic with me and help me push? But when they shouted him awake, he didn't panic. He turned to the wind and the waves and said, "Knock it off." And then he turned to them and said, "Where is your faith?" Except he didn't say it that way. And that's where people get a little bit confused. That's where people, because they just saw Jesus rebuke the wind, they assumed that Jesus was rebuking them. But what he's actually doing is he's having a teaching moment. Because the thing about our faith is that we pretty much always have it. Did you know that? You always have faith. Whether you believe in God or don't believe in God, you always have faith. The disciples in that moment had faith that they would die in a storm on the Sea of Galilee. That was their faith. Their faith was not anchored on, not rooted on the right thing. So what Jesus asked them is, say, hey, where did you place your faith? Where is it? Basically, take stock. Kind of a poke him in the forehead and be like, oh yeah. Yeah, I kind of put that in the wrong spot, didn't I? You see, like I said, Jesus was showing them an example. He was resting. He wasn't panicking. He wasn't stressed, but trusting. He was trusting in God's will for what was coming next. For them, the storm was a distraction. They lost sight, of where it should be. And so with Jesus' example of no need to panic, the thing is, God's not panicking, right? As I mentioned before, we're precious to him. There's nothing about our lives that should tell us that God doesn't actually care for us. And yet the storms distract us from that reality. The storms tell us, and Satan whispering in our ears tells us, oh, God doesn't care about you. In fact, he can't wait to punish you for this. You're getting this storm because you deserve it. It has nothing to do with deserve. Storms are a part of life. You can do bad things, and you can have consequences for that, and God still loves you. You see, the Pendleton peered into the darkness, just looking for rescue. They were hoping for anything. They had no idea what it would be. Mostly it was, maybe we can survive the night and see what comes next. We don't have to do that. Jesus came to us. He stepped down and lived and suffered and went through storms, sleeping, like us, to be with us. And so the crew of the Pendleton didn't get to choose, right, their rescue. The only thing that they could do, the only thing that they could even know was that they had to be willing to be found, right? They had to have a willingness to be found. All their striving and all their efforts didn't make much of a difference. Because the reality is we can't save ourselves, right? There will always be a storm that outdoes our best efforts. And when we come together as a community, we can get a little further in. As the Pendleton came together and started to unify towards trying to keep that boat afloat, but at the end of the day, the boat actually wound up sinking only several hours later. Again, you'll have to watch the movie to see what happens. But it's crazy. No matter how hard you try, the storm will overcome you. We can't save ourselves, but you don't have to. You don't have to. You don't have to fix yourself. You don't have to overcome your storm to be rescued. You just have to be willing to be found. You just have to be willing to receive that gift, that mercy, that grace, that power that comes when Jesus shows up in the midst of our storms. You have to be willing to receive that. And unlike the Pendleton, Jesus knows, as I mentioned, he knows exactly where we are. He knows exactly how high he needs to lift you up so that you can be rescued. His goal is to rescue you. The real question is, will you accept it? Will you accept it? Right? Because we have feelings, right? I feel like I'm drowning. I feel like nothing's going to work out for me. I'm getting tossed. I'm beaten. I'm overwhelmed. But I need rescue here, where I am now, because I can't move forward on my own. When Jesus comes to rescue, he does something really unique. He doesn't just save. He also restores. He brings perspective. He brings healing. He brings calm. Restoration. And it's free. You don't have to shout him awake. It's free. He's literally arrived with you with his arms open, just saying, okay, are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? And he'll do that forever. He's way more patient than I am. I asked my kids twice, and all right, I'm done. All right, you're going to drown. That's just what happened. Terrible father. Mugs in the mail. It's a free gift. We just have to accept it. So I had you guys bow your heads earlier, and I had you put some things in your mind. So go ahead and bow your heads again. Close your eyes. And take those things that you've been holding on to into your mind this whole time. And if you're in here and you're feeling like you're drowning, right? Like the world's been tossing you around, it's time to make a decision. Some of us have already made a decision that we're willing and ready to accept the rescue. And we have to be reminded that that rescue is available and here for us. But some of us in here, we don't know. And so my question to you is, are you ready to commit to Jesus? To declare him as your Savior and your rescuer? As your Lord? And that sounds really churchy. Like spiritual talk. Just accept. Just believe. But here's the truth. Jesus is declaring over you in this room right now that you aren't too far gone, that you aren't too remote, that you aren't too shamed, too broken, too waterlogged in your storm to be rescued. He's reaching ever more down to you in the midst of it because of your state, not despite your state. Because you, like me, when I was the age of 19, are lost. But he has declared that you are found. He's declared that over every single person in here, that you are found. And he wants nothing more than to get close to you and to love you and to care for you for eternity. And so with your eyes still closed, head still bowed. If you're in here today and you would like to accept rescue from Jesus, then I would ask you to go ahead and raise your hand quietly. Thank you. You can put your hands down. I'd like to pray for you now. Father God, thank you so much for effecting a rescue in the midst of our storm, Lord. That this world was not able to fix anything that I had going, anything that we had going, Lord, that as we continue to strive and scrape and stumble through the darkness and the wind and the waves, Lord, that we finally come to an understanding that we just can't do it on our own. And you gave us the best news ever when you said we don't have to do it at all. That by freely accepting the gift of your grace, Lord, that we come not only into the family of God, but we come into the peace of God. And so I'm praying for those that just accepted you, God, in their hearts, that you bring that peace immediately, God. I pray that as all of us in this room, as we bring the tough week that we had, the hard feelings that we had in our minds, God, that you accept our lament, God, that you accept our desire to give those to you in worship, God, that we are just grateful and thankful to you for who you are, God, but that you would strike those things from our lives, God, that you would take care of our families, take care of our communities, God, that you would bring peace into our neighborhoods, God, that you would bring peace into our lives on a personal level, on a broader level, God. God, I pray that we see immediate evidence of your moving and that we're not only not surprised by it, but God, that you would help us be expectant of it. And Lord, more than anything else, I'm just thankful for this family and this community. It's all because of you. We love you, Lord. Amen.